Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Horror Show live panel.
Yep.
Are you guys excited?
Yes.
Yes, there's the energy we're looking for.
We know it's Sunday, tail end of the con, but we're all here for you with some good horror talking. Thank you very much for joining us. As she said, we are The Horror Show at youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. We do all kinds of, any kind of horror coverage under the sun. We're a true horror variety show. That's what we've said since the very beginning. We're not scary, we're scary informative. We do 2 episodes every day, from reviews to trailer reactions to how-tos to celebrity interviews, as you can see on there. We also do a weekly News with Booze segment every Sunday, as well as Hail to Stephen King twice a week. So tons of content, and today we are here to talk about when horror goes wrong. And we have had plenty of experience seeing movies like this, so
terrible trailer reaction
to the introductions until we have our 5th panelist who went to go grab a beer, which you guys can't blame him for after this weekend's events. But yeah, so thank you very much for joining us, and let's get into it. So basically, we kind of broke it down into how do horror movies go bad? And there are a number of different factors that can go into this, and so we figured we'd start off with the directing, and I put a couple of key directors that are questionable, and yet some that have gained notoriety for their questionability. So as you can see, I've got the director of Birdemic up there. I've got, of course, Charles Band. I've got a love-hate relationship with that guy. I love the fact that he puts out so much content. I hate the fact that it's so much shit. Of course, we've got Uwe Boll, or Uwe Boll, or Uwe Boll, or however you want to say that shitty director's name.
Video game adaptation.
Guys, this is not going to be family-friendly. FYI, we're going to be talking about stuff that makes horror bad. We love horror, so fuck those guys. And of course, we've got Tommy Wiseau, and yes, he has not done a horror movie per se, but he's a shit director, and
kind of horrifying.
Had to include him. Or how did he do that?
No, well, I was going to
call The Room a horror movie after a fact.
Well, I was going to say I was going to talk about the production side.
Well, we'll get to that. Yeah, that's all here. Producer Dave here has been involved in a number of low-budget horror features, so he's got a unique perspective. So yeah, let's talk about the directing. Of course, the middle, in case you didn't know, is Ed Wood, one of the classic.
That's a great movie.
That is a good movie.
No, I'm saying it's the real Ed Wood, not the movie directed by Tim Burton. So anyway, yes, directing can be a major factor when it comes to terrible horror movies. I mean, a guy that thinks his vision is the best no matter what, that's not willing to take on any sort of input from anyone else. It's their vision from start to finish, and when that happens, you get Birdemic, which is one of the all-time best movies to make fun of. See, here's the thing. We live in a day and age where even bad directing and bad movies can somehow catch fire, because we live in a situation, we live in a society now that likes to thrive on sort of the hate of certain things. YouTube, you know, we are a YouTube show, and we've always strived to not necessarily be the negative Nancys out there. For the first 3 seasons, we only chose little-known horror movies that we thought were really good, but you just can't avoid the garbage. And so you find out that the directing has a lot to do with it, because, you know, the director is the captain of the ship. Everyone comes to the director with any possible decision, and he or she, has to make that determination. And unfortunately, that's when it starts to shine that they might not be the best suited to lead a team of people to make a movie. So that is my thoughts on the direction. If I had to go with the worst, I would pick Charles Band, because while he is extraordinarily prolific, his stuff is just garbage at this point. Like, it started off okay, but he's played in his own head for so long now that I think it's just done a detriment to him. So, talking about directing, Marcia, why don't you jump in?
You know, I'm going to be honest, directing's not my biggest like upset about bad horror movies, probably because I'm more of a story person and I blame everything on the writers. But I do agree with you. You know, from my little tiny experience with being on set and like dealing with different personalities, if you don't have a director that's willing to listen to all the creatives that he or she is surrounded by, you're going to end up with something that the crew's not going to be behind. Even if they treat their actors or actresses without integrity and want them to play it just their way and not let them assume their roles, you're going to see that on screen because they're not going to be as persuasive and you're not going to feel the heart behind it, which we want to see when we're looking at film, and especially with horror movies, because you can go really wrong really fast in a horror movie, and if the acting's not there and they don't feel like they have their freedom, then it's going to be crap. And it really relies on the director to allow them to do that, and it's his job to see it too when it's going on the film. So I don't have a specific film in mind when it comes to directing, but
Stephen King's It, the new one.
And
We just had an It panel at 12.
You
and she's not a
know,
big
do
fan of the
I
movie.
blame the director solely for that? No.
Solely? No.
No, I think there's a lot of people at fault for that movie.
Fair enough. Producer Dave. Oh, well, here, real quick, now that we have our fifth panelist, I am Cecil Laird.
I'm Marcia Parker.
Producer Dave.
I mean, Fuego here.
I'm Eric Harrison from the Death Twitch.
All right, so that is everyone on the channel for this panel. Producer Dave, what are your thoughts on directing? You might have some unique insight on this, too.
Well, like I'm going to try to speak more from the production side, like literally what can go wrong when you're making a film that can cause problems. And while you guys are saying, you know, sometimes the director is too hands-on, well, you have the exact opposite problem where sometimes directors like Ed Wood would watch a guy walk into a panel and the whole wall would shake and he'd be like, "That's fine, print it." You know, like he was the opposite, where he was like, he didn't see what other people were like, the glass is in a different spot now. It doesn't matter, nobody's going to notice that. You know, like that's bad directing, and that happens usually because of low budgets. So it's like, I literally have 12 hours today, and I have, 12 shots that I have to do, and each shot takes 2 hours. So I don't have enough time to do all the shots that I have. So how many takes am I going to get? 1, maybe 2. Mm-hmm. So you get that a lot in low-budget filmmaking, where acting and all that other stuff doesn't seem to quite, go together well and all come together. And that's literally, I would say, most of the time from time constraints or budgetary constraints. And then I was going to say about the directing, I personally am a fan of Ed Wood, and a lot of people consider like trauma films, these so bad they're good. I think they're kind of hit and miss. I think if you can have fun, if you can appreciate the art, then you can always enjoy a film, even if it's terrible. So
fair enough. Okay, I don't want to bait you, but I know you have experience with directors that might not necessarily be the best. So before we move on, what do you think a bad horror director does as compared to a good one?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, where they think that their idea can't be helped by others, and that's the biggest difficulty when you're dealing with ego-driven people, is that they're so focused on what they want to see that sometimes they don't. Someone might not be trying to change what their vision is. They're just trying to support it. And sometimes people see support as...
Or evolve it.
Yeah, they see it as trying to control it or whatever, and there's this political dynamic that happens. And usually when you have a good producer and a director combo, they have a delegation of those duties. So the director's able to just do what the director's supposed to do, and then the producer takes care. So if the director's dealing with, employee issues, like if they're dealing with a crew member who's a problem, they're going to be distracted that day. Mm-hmm. So that's why it should be, it goes to the production manager, producer's job to make sure that he's not or she's not taking care of the crap, and they're focusing on the film, because that's ultimately the product. And unfortunately, when you have low budgets and all this other stuff, there's just not that many people, and there's not that much delegation. And usually the director is the writer, the director, the producer, the editor. He's also doing the color on it. They're doing the special effects on it. So it's like one person is doing 15 jobs, and you can't do 15 jobs good.
Mm-hmm.
You can do them okay. And then I think that's what one of the big things is you get someone who's like, I want to make this great little horror film. It's going to be in one room. I'm going to have some cool actors in it. We're going to do it. It's going to take 14 days. It's going to cost $50,000. That's easy. But it's when it's like, hey, we're going to do like 8 locations, and we're going to rent this car, and we're going to crash this stuff, and we're going to do all this stuff, and we're going to do it for $10,000 on Kickstarter. You know that's not going to work because movies cost money.
Mm-hmm.
They just, period. They cost money to make. Now, you can make them cheap, you can make them inexpensive and good, but ultimately it comes down to the director's flexibility, in my opinion, and also the producer's cunning.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair
so
enough. Fuego.
Well, and that's somewhere where I can kind of jump in because my beloved Full Moon Pictures have lost their way over the years, at least in my estimation. I mean, I know Charles Band didn't. I don't believe he directed any of the early entries of the Puppet Master series, but those were the ones
Which is
that
why
were
they were
actually
good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you had Dakota and a few other guys, but the riffing on the Kickstarter thing that you mentioned, man. It didn't necessarily make those access of whatever films any better by having that sort of public funding, especially with as profitable as those Full Moon films are. They have the money to make something at least a little bit more of a superior product, and
But they're profitable because they're shit.
I know, they did not
I just never wanted to be the kind of person that appreciated hanging your hat on the fact that, hey, I made a profitable movie because it cost me $10,000 and there were enough saps out there that were willing to spend the equivalent of $50,000.
I cut a really good trailer.
Yeah, I mean,
cut a really good trailer. He sold it to Netflix.
I don't understand that. That's again a problem with certain directors where they have this thought. And again, I've met and talked to and tried to develop projects with directors that literally it just didn't make sense. They wanted to do certain things that just didn't make sense, and it's just a bummer. Sorry, I don't want to.
No, you're fine. Often a low budget can induce creativity and helps you think outside the box and whatnot.
Blair Witch Project.
Yeah,
True,
exactly.
true.
One of the most profitable horror movies ever. And there is some stuff that's so schlocky and terrible that it's great. Like I love Frank Henenlotter, for instance, Brain Damage, and the second Basket Case movie especially. And I mean, sometimes you can do trash, and it can, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes you can succeed, but bottom line, I don't like the band mentality where it's very, very deliberately just
turn and burn.
Exactly right, and that's why there's so many of those Puppet Master films at this point, and I mean they've been breaking my heart since the 5th entry. So
yeah, and actually I lost my thought a little bit the last time, but the turn and burn mentality. Yeah, Dave, let's jump into that real quick because there's certain directors, and I think this is a bad mentality for a director that would rather make a series of low-budget horror movies. So he's cranking them out, right? He's making whatever, $50,000 horror movies that end up making enough money where he can then make another $50,000 horror movie and then another $50,000 horror movie about every year and a half. And he's fine hanging his hat on kind of garbage horror movies that got him through to get to the next movie. And it's like, that is not a director that puts out quality that all of you guys would want. I mean, listen, I'm not going to pretend I know all of you guys. There might be a good portion of you that likes that kind of schlocky stuff. And hey, I don't begrudge you if you do, because there is a certain entertainment value to those things. So I certainly don't look down on that sort of segment of the horror genre. Exactly. However, it's just something that I would never have wanted for myself, to have that turn and burn mentality. I would rather spend a couple of years and hone a script and really try and sell it that's going to go beyond just getting me to the next movie. But that's me, that's my mentality, and there are directors that have made 6, 7 movies at this point, and I haven't made any because I want to make sure it's quality. Yeah. Whereas they're okay with just turning and burning. So what are your thoughts on the turn and burn?
Well, I was going to say turn and burn comes from the distributor, not the director.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily the director has to be willing to do it. But it's the distributor who says, hey, I want this movie on this date. I'll give you this much money to do it. Can you do it? And you either say yes or no. And a lot of times what happens is, for example, the Krampus movie that came out, Was that Fox?
Which one?
Which one?
No, that's what I'm saying. Was it Fox?
Which one?
No,
Like
the big one.
The big one? Yeah. I'm not sure if it was
Anyway,
Fox or
some
Universal.
studio
It might have
or
been
Universal. They
actually.
announced about a year and a half before Krampus came out that they were going to release a Krampus movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing a distributor does is he calls up all his directors and he says, hey, because Krampus is a non-trademarked property, so anybody can write a Krampus story.
And this
Public
literally
domain or whatever.
happened, by the way, to us.
So the distributor calls up. He's like, hey, they're going to do all this marketing next year for Krampus. Can you make me a Krampus movie so we can put it out at the same time? And literally, it's a bait and switch. It's so when you go to Redbox or you go to the video store, you see two Krampus movies, you don't know which one.
It was popularized when Blockbuster was still around, right? So you go, you see War of the Worlds, and then you go to Blockbuster and you see War of the Planets.
Yeah.
And it's got the sort of War of the Worlds artwork kind of thing.
Exactly.
And a lot of people that just don't know the difference, they'll pick those up.
And that's the thing that distributors count on. They count on, that's the thing.
Lowest common denominator.
And well, no, it really bothers me.
It's true.
Because the horror community is the most loyal of all the fans, and the distributors take advantage of that, and they put out 10 crappy movies for every good one because they know you're going to watch it, they know you're going to buy it, and they don't care if you like it or not. They really don't. All they care about is if you buy a ticket, and I hate to say it's a business, but that's what it is. Ultimately, the distributor goes, how many tickets did we sell? Was the movie good? I don't care. I didn't even watch the movie. I spent $50 million on it. I watched the trailer. Did it make money? That's all they care about. So if you want to make a turn and burn film and get paid, like if you want to just make movies for the rest of your life, you can do that. But I think, like I was saying earlier, that turn and burn mentality comes from the distributor, not necessarily the director. And the director has to be willing to do that, to take a job. It's kind of like when you're a photographer and you do a wedding or a birthday party or something like that. That's not really what you want to do necessarily. You want to be doing like runway modeling, or you want to be taking pictures in space or something like that. But you take the jobs that'll pay you. And because it is very difficult to make a living in this industry if you're at that top tier, the director level, you take what you can get. And that's why not just low budget films, but that's why you see big budget films with like Yule Bowl in it. And you're like, how did he get $6 million to make this film? And it's because he's had a track record that his crappy films make money. And when the numbers guys look at it, they don't watch the movies. They look at the numbers. They go, oh, he made this for $2 million and it made $6 million.
They made 3 Blood Rain movies? He must be successful.
He's got 4 Rampage. I mean, and that's the other thing is
House
the
of the Dead, all that
franchisability.
crap.
Like, they'll buy your idea if it's franchisable, but they want it. You can't have it anymore.
Well,
So
and dude, that's where the milking tournament and burn mentality succeeds, is based on franchisability. I guess. I mean, that's how my beloved Puppet Master is in
milking the audience.
A dozen films at this point, and it almost becomes lazy filmmaking after a while, because they're like, oh, it's a recognizable brand, so we can just continue cranking them out, and they'll make us enough, and so that's how it keeps going.
Clear Pepsi.
Snowball downhill.
Crystal Pepsi, yeah. All right, Eric, so what are your thoughts on directors ruining movies?
Directors ruining movies.
Horror movies, specifically.
Do directors ruin the movies? Or
You tell me. I mean, that's what we're talking about. What are your thoughts on it?
No offense, buddy.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm asking. That's what. Like I said before, I think it's less the director and more the overall logistics of the project.
The director is involved. His job is to like present a vision to the audience. And you guys are talking really technical aspects, but for me, like what ruins a movie is usually we're talking about directors, but one is usually the writing. That's the foundation for everything.
Yeah.
But as far as directors go, I feel like there's a really sacred relationship between the audience and the director. And he's got all the power mostly. He decides what you believe, what you don't believe, how you're invested in the
Who
plot
you love,
point.
who you hate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, like I know everybody's not going to agree, but for me, like I want a director that's going to give me some leeway to think for myself rather than feeding me all the answers. Just an example, I can't think of a specific movie, but I know I've seen this before, is where maybe a couple of characters show up and they see something really messed up. Most movies will just show you that. It's either in a quick flash or they'll just show off the special effect, which is great. But sometimes they just hold on the character and they never show you what they're looking at. And I love that because then I get to fill in the blank. So
I hate that.
For me, to answer the question, A director
If I wanted to use my imagination, I'd read a book.
should leave like some amount of the job to you, the viewer, so that you're interacting. I don't know if that was.
I think that's actually a good topic. Let's go off on that real quick because I think that's a worthwhile topic because that can determine whether you think a horror movie is good or bad. What are your guys' thoughts? Let's go down the line talking about showing versus not showing because there's all these people who are like, I'd rather conjure the image in my own head. That's way scarier than whatever they could show me. And it's like, read the fucking book then. Like, don't watch the movie. The movie is meant to show you. And I get into fights with people all the time. You know, the people that like The Witch, not me. Because I like seeing what's wrong. And sure, the last 5 minutes were good, but I don't want to say that a movie is good because of the last 5 minutes.
Well,
you know,
if we're going to riff on interpretability and leaving things vague enough for the, I always mention Donnie Darko director's cut versus the original film because it's not like you need to spoon feed the viewer every little answer.
I needed it. I like the director's cut way better.
I disagree. But
Just to clarify, it wouldn't be cool if everything was always like that.
Right.
But it's nice to have that sometimes.
No, that's fair.
Like I like seeing the effects, the kills, and that stuff's great. That's what we're all here for. But sometimes I can think up better things.
I like the ones that do the quick flashes, like just a brief flash, so it tells you what it is. But if you didn't really focus on it, you're still filling in blanks in your mind, and it's like, I don't know. But I'm a big fan. I want to see the creature. I don't want to imagine the scariness of the creature. Fuck you.
But that's what made Jaws so effective.
There's Spielberg is actually really good at showing, not telling, because he'll incorporate 3 or 4 shots into one shot. Yeah. So you won't even realize it, but you just watched 4 shots and it was just one shot because the camera moves into certain.
Unless it's Jaws, then all he can do is tell rather than show.
He's got that. I don't know if you guys remember. Remember when she's eating in Jurassic Park? She's eating the Jello.
Yeah.
And she just starts. Her hands start shaking. You don't have to see the dinosaur.
Exactly.
You know exactly what's happening, and that's what I think you're alluding to. And I agree that those are great. You don't have to show gore just for gore's sake.
We welcome it, but sometimes,
But when the big bad guy is he who walks behind the rose and we never see he who walks behind the rose, that pisses me off. Like, that's just me, though. That's just me. I like having a face to my horror. I don't know.
I think it just really depends on what movie you're watching. Like, do I like to see the creatures and everything? Yeah, I do. Like, you take A Quiet Place. I thought they did a really good job not showing the creature. And when you do see the creature, even if it's fast or they take the time to really show them off, like you.
The Ritual, another good one like that.
Yeah, you really enjoy it. So I think they did a good balance of that. Now, when you're talking like a Paranormal Activity where you spend a series of movies like not having the visual of the creature or the demon, and then they give you one, I thought I hated it. I didn't want to see Toby. Toby's supposed to be invisible. That's what's scary about him.
That's Paranormal Activity, in case you guys didn't know.
Was it 2? No, it was the last one. They showed Toby in the 4th.
Yeah.
The last.
Well, the ghost dimension is when we finally kind of saw.
You don't see him until the last movie.
Yeah, it's the ghost dimension.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So just real quick, just as an informal poll, I just want to see hands real quick. We'll do who would rather see it and who would rather imagine it. So who would rather see it?
Show me.
Damn, I'm going to lose this one. Who would rather imagine it?
It's
I think Imagine might have won just barely on that.
They can make a movie where you just imagine.
It's probably not just a clear cut this way or that way, but I'm just curious as an overall thing. Okay.
Personal taste.
All right, let's move to the next one.
I'm already winning.
The naked man creature.
So we're moving on to writing.
So this is where a lot of the people on the panel think it goes wrong first, and I would agree with it. I mean, it all starts with the story, and the director has to accept the story, the producer has to accept the story, the actors have to accept the story. Everyone has to accept the story in order for the movie to be made.
Before you even get to the story, you got to accept the concept and the premise.
True.
Because most of the time with horror films, we have to accept something for it to work. You have to accept that Jason doesn't die. You have to accept that Freddy invades your dreams. So there's a give and take there, and specifically it comes from the writing. Mm-hmm. So that's my whole thing.
Concept conceit is huge, obviously, when it comes to horror, but
suspension of disbelief.
But then there has to be a good execution of the script as well, which is where I think directors can go wrong.
Yeah.
So, talking of the script, Marcia, let's start with you. You said the writing is where it goes wrong for you most, so why don't you lead us off?
I'm just going to say bye-bye, man.
Oh, my God.
Can we just say bye-bye, man? I think that we could just drop the mic with that movie. It had
you could pretty much say that about a
everything.
lot of new horror coming out.
It has the darkness, the
The
other side of the
darkness was
door.
horrible.
The other side of the door.
Don't want to answer.
But follow us on
They've been
YouTube.
making that joke for way
Since
too
the
long.
movie came out, yeah.
Years
It's,
now, at this
Don't
point.
wanna
Beat it like a red-headed dead
Yeah,
horse.
but back to Bye Bye Man. I specifically brought that up because there's so many holes. It doesn't make sense. Even the premise of it is kind of ridiculous. Like, I think there was one trailer that, like, maybe this could be good, and then you're like, no, it's not. There's the whole thing, like, if you think it, if you say it, if you dream, like, so basically, if someone just mentions this dude in your vicinity, you're effed. You're dead.
he's uber
It's
shady.
over. You're done. It's like the disease in the stand, but except for no one's immune to it. You're all dead. It's just like, it's too much. There's no way to save yourself from that. And and then of course just the dialogue between everybody and just the holes everywhere. Like, I think we counted them as we watched the movie, and it just made you think, why was this made? Was it a turn and burn movie that went big production? Were they just hoping it was going to be just the next big bad? But it just
Such a waste of Doug Jones.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, it was
Big
so
time.
bad. And then, of course, The Darkness is my other favorite horror movie to hate. Mainly, like, none of it made sense. So you have this autistic kid that disappears in a canyon, and nobody notices it. He finds these supernatural rocks and just moseys his way out. Like, he dropped, like, a 20-foot drop, at least a 20-foot drop down a canyon, didn't have a scratch on him, and found, like, this hidden temple, and was able to,
Wait, what movie is this?
The Darkness.
No,
Yeah,
don't
he just
bother.
walks
Don't
right
bother.
out.
Don't
Nobody
bother.
notices that he disappeared. He was with his sister and didn't even notice that. She didn't even notice he just fell through the rocks. That was the biggest thing. It just spiraled from there. Like, no explanation of why the dad was cheating again or why everybody was going crazy, and nobody noticed that this kid was, like, burning stuff in his room and, like, talking to this demon, and, like, the whole house is cursed. Like, how does this even make sense? Why did this pass? Why did nobody see the holes in this before they even... How did they get Kevin Bacon? Was he really that bored that day?
And Paul Reiser.
Actors work for money.
Paul Reiser... Oh, I forgot. Well, Paul Reiser wasn't doing anything, so...
Yeah, I mean, writing can absolutely sink a movie. If the script sucks from the beginning, there's only you can't polish a turd. So
You could put it in a pretty box, though.
They tried.
With
you
nice
can
box
put it in a
art.
pretty box.
Put a
and
nice
you can,
trailer.
you can have a nice trailer saying,
makes me
"Hey, this
wonder-
isn't shit in this box. I promise you." And then you open the box, it's a big piece of shit.
Yeah, it does make me wonder if they killed it with cutting or editing, like something, like it. But can I get a
I
copy
feel
of
that's
the
a
original?
cop out. I almost put
don't
editing as a
know.
category, but
I think also there is a disconnect. Sometimes a writer will write a script, they'll give it to somebody, and they'll be like, "Did you get it? Did you like it?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, it's good."
Sure, yeah, you're
'Cause
paying
they
me,
didn't-
right?
They didn't get it at all, but this person might have a track record or whatever that they write. You know, Charles
band.
No, what's his name?
Charlie Kaufman?
Charlie
Yeah.
Kaufman.
You know, Charlie Kaufman has a series of successful movies, but they're all weird. So, like, somebody reads that and they're like, "Oh, it's Charlie Kaufman." So they're like, "Okay, let's just put it through." You know. So I think that happens too when you get really weird writing. Maybe the writer and the director, they get it. They're like, "Oh, we get it," but like they never translate it to the screen. You know, and that's what I think Eric was kind of talking about too earlier.
Well, and something that I would contend is Scream is one of my favorite series of all time. I don't bother with the television series, but switching writers can be massively detrimental for a franchise. There's a reason Scream 3 sucks, in my opinion. Not written by Kevin Williamson. He did 1, he did 2, he did 4. There was a consistency of tone in all of those, and Aaron Kruger just didn't get it. I mean, he didn't create the characters. He tried his damnedest to riff on them, but I mean, you can always tell when there's a difference of tone, there's a disparity, and things just don't quite feel right. And yeah, I really don't like Scream 3 because of that. You know, it just feels very different. You know, it's the odd man out, I guess you could say.
Well,
Redheaded
Star Wars is
stepchild.
another great example of that because
Ooh, that's debatable, sir.
you know, and they're all concepted by the same guy. But then when you have different people writing it, sometimes people like the third one better than the second one, or the second one better than the first one, or whatever.
And sometimes people get fired, like the safety not guaranteed guy losing his job and bringing JJ back.
Sometimes they just
So,
remake the same movie 4 times.
Yeah.
boy,
Yeah, that's
Force
true.
Awakens.
Eric, your thoughts on writing killing horror?
Oh yeah, I mean, because you can write a fast food horror and you know it's gonna sell, so that's kind of a problem, I guess, because you don't have to like you were saying earlier. We're gonna eat this up. We just are.
Yeah.
We want more, like so you can exploit that and just that's fine.
Yeah.
First draft is fine.
Oh, but sometimes, but sometimes it's like the stuff, and it's just delicious and
No,
fantastic.
they're
and-
so good. They're so bad.
I mean,
it's good. I love
I've
them.
literally been on a set with a script with typos and
Oh my God.
stuff. So
I've
you're
read
like,
that script.
yeah, and you're
Those
like,
scripts.
wow, they didn't even take the time to proofread this. Like, why are we doing this? So,
And yet people greenlight it, and they
Yeah.
go ahead. They give him money. Like he'll send that script off, and money comes back
No,
his
I don't
way.
think he
It's
sends
like,
the script.
You don't think so?
Spell check.
No.
No.
Right.
Spell check is an automatic teacher.
No, I don't think he'd get
It doesn't
funded if
matter.
people read his scripts.
I'm surprised he gets funded anyway. Anyway.
Dun dun dun. What's the name of that
Yeah.
director by
Your
chance?
resume.
Writing, yeah. So writing can obviously be the downfall from the very beginning when it comes to bad horror movies. And
also
yeah,
save
it's
a
like some of you
shitty
guys
horror
said,
movie.
if there's a quote unquote pedigree behind the writer, that is to say they've done stuff that has gotten funded and somehow made money in the past, then it becomes a far more forgiving place, out there with the funding and
Well,
everything.
until they don't make money.
Yeah.
And then
once
people
that
are like,
happens,
who are you?
then they'll turn on you.
Remember I
on
made you
a dime.
$17 million over the past 10. I don't remember your name. What's your name?
Yeah.
What did you do for me this year? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And that is the mentality, right? What have you
Well,
done
it
for
is-
me lately,
well,
right?
Unless you're Stephen King or
Hey.
Hey,
I'm saying,
hey.
Stephen King doesn't get turned down for a meeting.
Mm.
He could write 10 bad books in a row. He'd still get his meeting. you
True,
know?
especially after the last 2 years.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Next.
Crushing it.
Oh, and one last thing on writing. Writing can save. Like if you're in a situation where you're like, oh no, I don't have my actor for the rest of the shoot. She's done. She's paid and gone. Now I have to come up with a way to have her still be in these scenes. So creative writing can actually help you save, a film that's about to be a disaster. So
That's fair.
you can both save and it's a double-edged sword.
Okay. So next up is the acting. And here we have a number of examples. We have Nicolas Cage from The Wicker Man. We've got Paris Hilton from The House of Wax.
Hey, seeing her get killed was pretty dope, I
Yeah,
gotta
but
say.
she's still horrible. We've got the kid from The Babadook.
Everybody's favorite.
We've got the kid from Troll 2.
Who's that kid?
They're eating her, and then they're gonna eat me. Oh my God! And then I think that middle guy, or the guy at the top right's from The Stepfather 2, if I'm not mistaken. So just some really examples of horrible acting, and you don't generally attract that caliber of talent unless you have a real shit script anyway. But nonetheless, it's laughable, and honestly, acting it almost comes around to being sort of enjoyable. Really bad acting, like if you make it a drinking game, then you can make it a fun movie. But unfortunately, if that's the case, then there's been something that's gone wrong in the production process. And unfortunately, a lot of the time that has to do with the actors that the crew or the casting, the casting director, or again, budgetary limitations. If you have budgetary limitations, you can't necessarily get the highest caliber actor. You might be stuck with the local talent or whoever is nearby that's a SAG actor.
Yeah.
Anything like that.
So most people don't know about SAG. So when it comes to acting, if you're in the union, you get minimums for every day that you work, and you also get pension and health and a cut of the royalties. So being in SAG is really good if you're an actor because you get a whole organization that watches out for you so you don't get exploited by low-level directors who are like, hey, you're going to work for $25 a day, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for 6 weeks, and you're going to be in a movie. And people say yes to that, and they just get exploited. And you get people who have never acted before and who are just doing it because they'd love to have the experience. and so directors and producers will take advantage of that. So SAG is good, but SAG is also a pain in the butt when you don't have a lot of money, because you have to pay your actors a set amount of money. If you're making a movie for less than $300,000, you can pay your SAG actors $100 a day as the minimum. And then if you're making a movie for more than $300,000, you have to pay them $1,024 a day, and that's the SAG, or $1,020 a day or something like that. And that's the SAG minimum. So if you're a SAG actor working on a decent budget film, you're making $1,000 a day. So you're more than willing to sit around for 16 hours a day and work your ass off. And you can see when people are in the union and when they're not in performances, because they want to be there when they're in the union. And when they're not in the union, they don't want to be there and they don't perform. And that's where I, as a producer, that's what I see happen logistically on films that go bad, because the actors are tired. They only got a meal break 5 hours ago. You know, when you push people to their limits, I mean, I hate to call actors like the meat that they are, but they really are. They're performance meat, and you got to tenderize them, and you got to put them in a nice little spot, and you can't keep them up too late, and you can't hurt them. You got to corral them. You got to have an assistant who makes sure that they get their coffee right. You know, and there's a reason for that. And you'll see it in the performances. You think Daniel Day-Lewis, when he's walking around on the set of Lincoln, he has people, you know, like you think he's thinking about any of that other stuff? Right. So that's where I think the acting. I think everybody can be an actor if you can devote your concentration to your character, and if you can do that, then you'll have really good. And the people who can do that while all these other distractions are happening, those are what I would call good actors, and the people who can do it without any distractions are the greats. So while acting can kill it, it can also save it. Again, it's that double-edged sword of every part of a film. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it on that.
Yeah.
Fuego?
And I mean, sometimes cheese is good. I mean, trauma and full
tearing
moon
me
being-
apart, Lisa.
But I mean, I even look at stuff like, you know, Chud and Street Trash and, you know, things like that. And honestly, Larry Cohen, pretty much, I mean, most of the stuff that he has done, bless his heart, whether it's Return to Salem's Lot or pretty much anything he did with Michael Moriarty, that guy overacts the hell out of everything, and I love it. So, I mean, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes a bad performance can make a film endearing because it's just that hilariously over the top and silly.
That's why I like Wicker Man.
Everyone knows that scene.
Yeah, if there's one guy that knows how to blow it up, it's Nick Cage. We just watched Mom and Dad on the channel and reviewed it. If you want to see Nicolas Cage at his Nicolas Cageiest, that is one, and it is.
And we didn't even talk about how, you know, all actors are crazy. If you're an actor in this room, you have a gene in you that makes you crazy because you want to be in front of millions of people and you want to be famous and you want to.
It's narcissism.
Yeah. So when you have those people on set, you know, they need a lot of space. You know, the egos require space, and so the bigger star you have, the more on edge everybody is, because it's like, hey, don't piss this guy off. Because,
little Tommy Cruise or whatever.
The movie's over if you piss Nick Cage off and you know, look him in the eye or whatever. I mean, there's so many different stories I've heard about Nick Cage and a lot of actors who you think are really.
You saw what happened with Christian Bale when the lighting guy fucked up.
But that's,
on the Terminator Salvation. Yeah.
He actually, you know, there's a great radio interview about how he talked about how when you're like I was talking about, that super focus and concentration, he's in character. You know what I mean? Like he's emotionally ready to yell at someone, and when someone ticks him off, it just
transfers
so quickly. And the other thing is, like I was saying before, where you have all these egos, they're all on set, they're all concentrating, everybody's working hard, and you get the one guy who's, you know, he's distracting people, or he's doing something that, you know, drives away from that concentration, and then you get bad performances and all that other stuff. So, or you have to shoot another day because you lost the day for bad performance.
Well, and as I think more about little Tommy Cruise, I think miscasting can really devastate a film too. That Mummy movie was shit, and it was because Cruise just didn't fit the role.
No, that was
estimation.
script from the beginning too.
True, but I think maybe
one.
with, you know, somebody who fit, they tried to turn it into an action vehicle, and it just it didn't fit. And you know, I mean, his scream on the plane alone, where you and I were
they cut it out of the movie.
Laughing in the theater.
It was in the trailer. They cut that scream out of the movie because it was that's all anyone would talk about was
Priceless.
But why do you go to see a Tom Cruise movie?
Not for the screens.
No, you go. He's entertaining.
Yeah.
He's
you know, it's the same principle as The Rock for me.
Yeah.
I go because he's charismatic and he's got that sort of thing that I just like seeing on screen, even though it's a shit movie a lot of the time.
He's got that thing you like seeing on screen.
The Rock's got that thing. I like seeing. I don't know.
He
I don't know what
smells.
you're trying to say, Fuego. Derek, your thoughts on acting?
Oh yeah, I watch an awful lot of schlock, so I'm used to bad acting, and that's like I can handle it in that because it's all bad. But when you have like a potentially really good movie and you're invested in the story and the plot,
the gas station attendant.
and then somebody says something and you remember you're watching.
You want
the
fries with
movie,
that?
That's the worst, though. You know, because bad acting can be charming.
Yeah.
Depending on the circumstances, but when everything else around the acting is good, and then that just like brings it all down.
Yeah.
That's
Sticks
the
out
worst.
like a sore thumb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, crack in the glass.
Marcia, your thoughts on acting?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on what you're saying that if it's a good movie or potential of being a good movie and you have a bad actor and he pulls you out of the movie, then it just ruins your whole experience, and it's kind of a sad moment when that happens. And then, you know, I don't watch a lot of CB movies because I don't think it's fun to watch people fail. Yes, I don't like, you know, if they're doing it as like it's supposed to be. I like campy movies, like I liked, you know, Evil Dead, and even though it wasn't meant to be campy, but they
Army of
owned
Darkness
it.
was meant to be campy.
But they owned it, and I'm like, well, if you're going to own it, then it makes it entertaining and worth watching. But if it's something that,
Oh no, we're
you know, they're
serious.
really trying really hard and it's just not happening, then I just feel bad. And I don't want to feel bad. I want to watch a scary movie and be scared.
I guess that your best was.
I was at a screening once, and it was a short before it, and it was literally about making purses out of aborted fetuses. It was horrible.
Damn.
And
Trendy.
we, the audience started laughing at parts because it was so horrific that we were like, okay, we need to like relieve this tension. And so a couple people started laughing, and then at the end of the thing, it was just hilarious. But I mean, it was not meant to be hilarious. It was meant to be scary, and it was so disturbing that people were uncomfortable. So I think that's another thing, like, you know, the actors can kind of drive that. Like, you can either enjoy it or like you're saying, if you take it too seriously and it's schlocky, then it's almost like sad to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much everything on Kings of Horror. So.
Who actually is now like the biggest horror channel on YouTube.
I
over
saw.
Like half of it. Well, no, I think Creepypasta counts if he's a million. But anyway, what's next,
2 minutes
Marcia?
of a movie.
I think the next is the thing David can speak the most on.
Oh God, I already feel like I've been
Oh,
talking
no,
about
maybe
it.
not.
No, it's special effects and practical and digital.
Oh, okay, there we go. That's right. Special effects, guys, can kill a horror movie, both practical and digital. So,
You got all my favorites up there. You got the Scorpion King, Mr. Dwayne
Really?
Johnson.
I got 3 examples of digital and 3 examples of practical.
You got the Langoliers.
Langoliers,
God.
excellent.
Yeah.
Great
Such
movie,
a good
bad special
story
effects.
too.
Is that American Werewolf in London?
Wow.
No, that's
No?
actually Van Helsing Wolf.
Oh!
That's Van Helsing Wolf. We have
Sorry,
Terminator
so
from
similar.
The first Terminator,
Yeah,
which
Terminator.
is an awful practical effect.
Gingerbread
As good as the
Man?
movie.
Dan Winston's rolling in his grave.
Yeah, but that first one was really bad.
You got Gingerbread Man?
Yeah, we got the Ginger Dead Man, and
Oh.
then we got Troll 2.
I thought that was good
Troll
practical
two,
for
yeah.
1984.
So lots of bad, you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, not that The Mummy 2 was going to be anything great with the Scorpion King, but
But it's definitely something that took you out of the moment. Like,
100%.
I actually rewatched that scene because I was like, I don't really remember it. And when I saw your photo up there, I'm like, let me look at that again. And I'm like, okay, this is an intense moment with Brandon Fraser and that other guy, I don't remember his name. And then all of a sudden here comes The Rock. And this is like,
Spider Rock.
what is this? Yeah, like,
Scorpion Rock.
all,
Yeah.
no practical at all. It's all CG. And,
The spiders.
and you could
Whatever.
you could tell even when you watched it the first time, it dated itself then. Like, it was that bad. Like, it's really bad.
Yeah, I mean,
Really bad. Take you
it's,
out of
it's
it.
a real unfortunate thing. Like, I think if you're going to make a low-budget movie, if you're going to not
use
skimp
CG.
on anything, don't skimp on your practical effects.
Yeah.
Because that saves movies so much more often than anything else, in my opinion.
I think if they would have coupled the practical with the CG, it would have been more of a success. And
well, bad acting can be saved by good practical because you can kill the bad actors, and if you have a good practical, then you're happy. You're like, oh, the guy's dead, and it looks awesome. You know, like that's the way to go, and but God bless, can some of those effects take you out of a movie immediately?
Yeah.
The troll masks from Troll 2 are god-awful. The ginger dead man is literally, you can almost see the dude's hand inside the thing just stretching it because the mouth doesn't really open. It just stretches. And it's like, oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. And I know that's the point of some of these movies, but, I mean, you can't
like
deny.
The sci-fi movies that you love that you fast forward just to get to the monster parts.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, it's just an alligator that they blew up.
Well, that's
You know
what
I
happened
mean?
with the last 4 Sharknado movies.
Oh,
for me. It's like,
Sharknado.
why? I'm not watching this for the
You mean
acting. I'm
all
watching
of the
for the shitty
Sharknados?
effects.
all the
Yeah,
sharks.
really.
All they did was cut out images of sharks from Photoshop
so
and then
fun.
put them in a swirl.
Well, which is a Birdemic. That's exactly. I mean, who's seen Birdemic here? Anybody? Okay, enough of
I'm
these.
so sorry for you guys.
No,
I'm so sorry.
That's one of those films where you're like, oh wow, a guy made this on his computer. He made an entire film, like just at his home, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna add some explosions, and they're not gonna make any sense. But he's like, oh, I've got all these pre-made things. I'm just gonna drag them in.
I just like imagining the day of filming where he's like, okay, birds are attacking you, shoo them away, and like they're all just like.
Well, he had.
It's like the birds are just. It's the same shot of the birds that he just puts in front of every thing. It's like 3 birds flapping. It's so horrible. But at the same time, you have to say that I guess on the flip side of the coin, terrible special effects can save a movie. The only reason we know about Birdemic is because of how awful it is.
Well, and the fact that the director is a
save is
notoriously crazy person.
Yeah, same as Tommy
usually they
Wiseau.
are, right? Yeah. So
Same as
usually
Tommy Wiseau.
the crazier you are, the more people are like, "Oh, that's a real artist. He cut his ear off. Well, we got to get in line for him."
Yeah.
You know? Like, so, and then I was gonna say, I know I'm talking, I keep stealing this, but when it comes to low budget, and you're like, "Hey, let's put a CG something in." No, don't do it, because real good CG is expensive. It's like I think it's like $2 million a minute. It's very expensive because
Like, let's do a CG Krampus.
no.
Oh, bad idea.
For
And then for the
$4,000.
sequel, yeah. let's just
That
have it
only
on-
costs $4,000.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not even gonna tell you how much it really cost.
Oh, boy.
It was about half the budget of the movie.
Damn.
That effect was half the budget of that
for
movie.
6 shots in
If
the
you guys
film.
want to see a really terrible Krampus movie, Krampus the Reckoning might be the one for you. But anyway,
I think
Fuego,
you-
your
you
thoughts on
plugged it
special
enough.
effects?
Yeah, well, so this is something I was thinking about just earlier today in the effects debate. I personally think that going with CGI instead of practical can be one of the most detrimental things, and the example that I make,
Oh, boy.
you're not going to agree with me
Here
on
we
this.
go.
The Thing
Thing
prequel.
from 2011.
The Thing prequel, when you compare the effects of the Carpenter remake to the CGI in that film, it looks terrible in my estimation. And behind the scenes stuff with that, they
Such a
had a
bummer.
whole ton of great practical effects that they spent a shitload of time working on.
And then they replaced it
money.
with digital
And the
effects.
studio ended up saying, nope, we got to go digital. It's not quite up to par, so on and so forth. And I just feel like it looks bad. Now, the acting and the story are not bad in that movie, but the effects are what just ruin it for me,
Right.
honestly.
Well, and that's probably because they spent half the effects budget on the practical, and then they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, well, we're going to spend the other half now on fixing it in post."
Yeah, well, and then they ended up
that a
recycling
lot.
and
I hate
using
that
all of
phrase.
those creature designs for a much more inferior film called Harbinger Down, which we're like, oh, those creatures look great, but the story was shit.
Yeah.
Same with The
You know.
Void. I mean, well, The Void, actually, I liked The Void. You weren't as big a fan
I
of
wasn't the
Void as
biggest
me.
fan, yeah.
But, the practical effects was very reminiscent of The Thing and
Yeah,
stuff, so I
you can
was
tell where
a
they drew
big
inspiration
fan of that.
from. Yeah.
Eric?
You know what? I have a respect for practical effects because it takes a lot more craft. Well, I don't want to put down CGIs. I don't know what the process is, but it seems like
It's 4 times as many people, 4 times as expensive, and 4 times, everything.
really.
Yeah, it really is.
I guess it's all about the craft for me
Yeah.
because I used to want to be a special effects guy when I was a kid and stuff, and I watch these horror movies and just be like trying to learn how to do it. So to this day in my life, when I see practical, it engages me because I'm like, how did they do that? It must have done this. And sometimes, like, you know, with the Fly from the remake, they had so many puppeteers for that Brundlefly at the
Like
end.
16 or something like
And
that,
that's
right?
amazing to me. And like I said, I don't want to put down people that do CG, but there's not a lot. There's not like I'm not going, oh, how did they do that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not everything's going to look like Thanos, man. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, and unless it's actual 3D CG tech, it's just drawing. It's just animation. That's how most CG is done.
A lot of it looks like a cartoon to
Yeah, unless it's true 3D animation. But I was going to say the interesting thing when you compare the costs, they're actually very similar because if let's say I want to do an effect of the tooth effect that you were talking about, where the jaw like opens up.
Yeah,
So
elongated jaws.
In
I
order
think
to
are the
do that in
scariest things in
CG,
horror
you got to
for me.
build a head, then you got to detail it, and it's probably 10, 15 people, 2 weeks of work to do one shot. For a practical effect, it could be months. Because first you have to cast the actor, then you have to sculpt it, then you got to cast that. Then you got to make a reverse of that.
It's like
then you got to put latex on. Then you got to paint it. Blah blah blah. Then you got to put So it could be about the same price in the end. And so when they go, hey, let's do it CG because it'll be quicker. That's literally what they're talking about. They're like, oh well, we don't want to wait 6 months just to make and have it for one day and one shot, when we could just get it right in the computer the whole time. So
you know why else I like it is because it'll actually affect filmmaking. Because if they're like, we can just CG it, so let's just film it this way and we'll show everything. But if it's a practical, well, we got to block it just right.
Right.
Just light it just right.
well, you still have to light it and block it right with CG.
Sure.
It's like 300 is a really good example. That entire movie is CG.
Yeah.
There's the only practical set was dirt
Same with
floor.
Avatar.
Was like a dirt floor.
Avatar
and
was
Avatar
also the same
was well I think that's almost completely CG, right?
Except for the base of
yeah.
operations
Okay.
and stuff.
But yeah, I mean, if you spend half of your budget on your practical effects, you're going to be way better off than someone who's going to spend twice that amount on CG, and you're not going to get what you can get.
Well, the non-tangibles too. You got to think about the non-tangibles. When you have a practical effect, the actors have something to react to. They have something that they can see and be like, "That's fucking disturbing. I would not want that coming at me. I'm going to react as such." Whereas, okay, this guy's holding a fucking tennis ball. Yeah, I'm not scared of tennis balls. I'm going to react as such. You know what I mean? So,
Always
yeah.
circus.
Marcia, did you get to give your opinion on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. I think we're getting close.
Yeah, we got about 8 minutes left.
So, budget, or lack thereof, can obviously be one of the largest determining factors. If you decide to press ahead, then you're already making concessions if you don't have a lot of budget. Now, that's not always a bad thing. Budgetary restrictions, what is it? What is it? Something is the necessity of invention. What is it? That saying? Anyway. What is it? Oh, there you go. Necessity is the mother of invention. I couldn't get it right in my head. But yeah, so you need to get something done, and you only have a limited budget to do it, so you come up with creative ways to handle it and to answer your problems. So sometimes it can be, and again, this is why I went with directors first, because a good director can know how to do that. They can look at a budget and be like, okay, I have this much, here's how we need to allocate it, here's what we need to do to make sure it's a successful film in spite of the budget, rather than let's make it a film that might be successful because of the budget. I think that's two different mindsets that a filmmaker has to have. And I would much rather be the one that's like, let's do it in spite of it rather than let's do it because of it. Because I think you're going to result in, The Room versus not The Room. The Monster, maybe. I think The Monster is a good low-budget movie that did a really good job with a single practical effect creature thing that was largely an exercise in acting. Came out a couple of years ago. If you guys didn't see The Monster, it's a great one.
Brian Bertino?
Yeah, Brian Bertino, same guy that did
The Strangers.
Right? Yeah, so,
Damn good movie.
Budgetary restrictions. Marcia?
Yeah, I mean, budget, of course, is going to affect any movie or anything you do. But there's always been some really good budget films out there. I mean, you look at, now I can't even think of that. What's that movie?
That narrows it down.
Oh my gosh, Saw.
Saw, yeah, okay.
Saw. And you look at Saw. I was in film school with David at the time that came out. We were actually doing our own film festival entry at the time. Like, it just came out and we were doing our own film festival. But it was inspiring as a film student because you're like, oh crap, they just spent
3 actors, 4 actors in a room.
No
all
budget.
Practical effects.
Yeah.
And it's just a really tight script. I won't say it's a good script. It's a very tight script. And that's, again, it comes to the writing, the directing, the budget. Everything has to kind of line up for something to be good.
Yeah, and they didn't have top named actors. I think they maybe
Carrie Yules is not a top name.
Danny Glover and Carrie.
Those
are 2 named people.
Name enough. Name enough.
They're name enough.
I thought it was like Shaq and Dr. Phil or something like that.
Scary movie.
Yeah.
Scary movie version. That was fun.
Yeah, but I agree. I do agree with Cecil that just because you have a low budget doesn't mean you have to make it a low budget movie. And you can make it feel bigger than what it is. And if you're just putting out a movie just to put out the movie and you're just saying, just trying to do too much with what you have, then you're going to end up killing the movie and coming up short, and no one's going to be able to really enjoy the movie the way it could have been.
Fake it till you make it. Yeah. The example that I was thinking of, recent film, had Fassbender in it. It's called The Snowman. They basically ran out of money in the middle of the process, couldn't get any more, and so there were chunks of the script that were never even filmed, and every reviewer was like, this jumping around, it makes no sense, what the hell, but they released it anyway, and people who have read the book, and all of the
cut a really good
that
trailer.
Resulted, I mean, it actually, we did a reaction to it. It looked good, and
I'm telling you, that's
everybody
90% of it
just
nowadays.
trashed it because of the fact that the director even admitted that there was chunks of the story they did not get to film, and so it's an incomprehensible mess.
Eric,
So,
thoughts on budgetary restrictions ruining movies?
Oh, I don't know. It's hit or miss. Sometimes a low budget means that you can tell a more intimate story because you have to have it all in one location, and sometimes I'm down with that, as opposed to like making a big extravaganza just because you have the money to do it.
Michael
It's
Bay.
hit or miss. It's hit or miss.
Okay.
Well, and I was going to say, my only thing with budget is no film is ever finished. It just runs out of money.
That's the saying.
Good point.
in
If
and out
you
of
give a
Hollywood.
director $150 million, he'll spend every penny of it. I'm just telling, that's just how it is. No movie is ever finished. Like, if you gave a guy $150 million, and he's like, hey, look, if you give me 150 more, I'll make, it's going to be so good.
yep. If your name
Like,
is Guillermo
it's
del
like
Toro,
an addiction. It's like heroin. Like, you can't get enough money when you're making a film, because money solves problems. In filmmaking, not in life, but in filmmaking, money solves problem.
In life.
Hey, we only rented this crane for a day. We need another $150,000 for another 2-day rental. Done. Otherwise that's a problem. Okay, now we have to reschedule 2 weeks of shooting because blah blah blah. So money solves problems, and it's so easy to go over budget. It just happens. It's like we haven't even shot our first shot yet, and we're $60,000 over budget, right? So that can happen very easily, especially on the lower budget films. Even on big budget films, that happens too. There's a great part in Tropic Thunder where they're like, we haven't even started filming yet. We're 6 months behind, and $3 million over budget. I mean, that happens all the time.
well, yeah, even when we made our short film,
Yeah.
I mean, it was supposed to be 2 days, and what
Ended up
turned
being
into
Ended up being. It would have been. It ended up being 3 actual shooting days, but yeah, it was 4 days
And
because one of them got
so
rained
how did
out.
our horror go wrong? We had an actor who didn't show up. We had rain.
Actually, no, he showed up the first day. We filmed his
Right.
parts, and then we had to get a replacement because he did not show up the rest of the time.
Right. And part of that is because I don't think he had ever acted before, and
It actually worked out. My personal trainer at the time filled in and was a better actor than a supposed actor.
Surprisingly, yeah.
So I think we had a little bit of, on Sweet, we did the short, we had a little bit of everything happen to us. We had very tight budget. We had some practical effects that we hoped would be better than they were.
I got to kill people.
Yeah,
Great.
incidentally, he's dressed up as the character Skinner Sweet from American Vampire, the comic book series that was co-created by Scott Snyder and Stephen King and drawn by Raphael Albuquerque. And they've done a number of trades, like 8 or 9 trades at this point, and we made a short film called Sweet, where he played that character, and it was in continuity, but it wasn't. It was our own story, and we had practical effects. We had a beheading. We had actual, like his limbs grew and his fingers grew, and one of them, he put his fingers up through a guy's, another vampire's head and came out the top and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But
and it was a mixture of practical and CG, and it was everything that was planned out ahead of time was planned out ahead of time. But that didn't stop the gremlins from showing up on set and being like, "Hey, it's gonna rain today," or "Hey, your
actor's not coming,
or your makeup
person's not coming,
or whatever it is, and suddenly it's like, oh, now we're down 2 people, and we're already doing this on such a tight budget. So it's really easy, like I said before, so you could blame any single one department, but ultimately it comes down to, do you have money to make the problem go away? And if you don't, do you have the creative wherewithal to
make it go away. So, guys, I really wanted to get a little bit of opinion from you. We have about 1 minute left.
Well, no, actually, since we're the next panel, we have another half hour.
That's true. That's true. Technically so. So does anyone have any thoughts they'd like to give on where horror goes wrong that we might not have touched on? Go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to remakes, I recently watched...
Don't start with me. I'll get into it with you right now about remakes. Oh, my gosh. Okay. I'm actually a fan of remakes, so...
I sat through the Poltergeist remake.
I'm sorry.
We all liked it.
I didn't.
I know, I'm just sorry.
What I think remakes is just when they're bad, a lack of understanding of what made the original one good.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to totally recopy the original, but at least understand the elements that made it good.
Yeah.
My thoughts on remakes, just real briefly, are the old movies don't go away, guys. They don't film the new movie on the prints of the old ones. So
Maybe
all
they
of those
should.
movies are still there. I would rather have an opportunity at another good entry in a franchise than just shit on it before it even happens because it might not be that. That doesn't make sense to me. They could have very easily not made a Nightmare 3 or a Nightmare 4 or a Nightmare 5 or a Jason 4, 5, 6, whatever. None of those might not have been made. Any of those could have not been made, and no one would have batted an eye. But I am a fan of letting them give it a try. Maybe it'll be good. I liked the Friday the 13th remake because it had a lot of the best elements of a number of those movies. So I'm not down on that at all. But
and there was the holy trinity of 80s remakes, which is The Fly, The Blob, and The Thing. They were all remakes, of 50s movies.
So
those are
anyway, guys,
tremendous films.
we could probably call it there so you all can go bathroom and stuff. We're going to have a great horror debate panel here at 4:30.
We got prizes.
We are going to debate Eric from the Death
got
Twitch,
prizes.
and then we're going to have audience members come up and debate each other. And we do have prizes for those of you that want to do that. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for
Swaggy.
coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
I've been producer Dave.
Feel free to go and subscribe to us. We
Stay
love it.
scared.